Good evening. Welcome to maryisthenewEvangelization.com. My name is Tom. And tonight we're coming to you with a exclusive interview with Brother Gordon from Ireland, who is a missionary, musician, very active in the Legion of Mary, and probably most important, he's out in front of the abortion facility in Ireland daily. And it's my pleasure and honor to introduce to everyone Brother Gordon. And Gordon, welcome to marysnewevangelization.com. And everybody is just, I'm sure, they want to know what's going on in Ireland with abortion. What could you tell us about what's going on, and what are you experiencing there daily?
Good to see you, Tom. The truth is that as of last year, with the new legislation, the law was drafted and approved or brought into effect, allowing a woman to have an abortion if she has what is called suicidal thoughts, suicidal temptations. And all the psychiatrists and all the medical professionals met with the experts, with the legal people, and basically explained to them that abortion is not treatment for suicide. It is not a way for a woman who may be thinking of ending her life to bring hope into her heart. So, and it is not medically necessary to save the life of a mother in the case of a child that may be, in a position where it's not able to be delivered easily. So we have a new law now, and it has never been used to commit an abortion in Ireland. As far as I know, and as far as the people who are involved in the pro-life work in Ireland know, the law hasn't been implemented yet to actually do an abortion. But it's on the books, and theoretically it could be used, even though no child has been killed yet in Ireland.
So where do you go daily?
I go to a place called Well Woman Clinic. It's near the Liffey River, which is the river that runs through the center of Dublin, and they have a certain amount of street traffic that comes in and out. I don't interact with the girls or men going in. I don't in any way speak to them or give them a pro-life message. But what I do is I have a picture of Mary, of Our Lady of Guadalupe, who is behind you, and I sing some pro-life songs, and I have one placard that says the new abortion law is life-ending, not life-saving. It's a very, very true statement.
Does anyone go out there with you?
Occasionally I do pray with two girls and another man on a Saturday in a different location in front of the Irish Family Planning Association, which is the Irish affiliate of Planned Parenthood. And they have joined me there since I first came to Ireland about 11 years ago. They have been praying regularly with me, at least two of them, more or less every Saturday for about 2 hours in front of that other facility.
So there are no abortions happening in Ireland?
As far as anyone knows, on either side, no abortions have been committed under this new law.
How about under the old law?
Under the old law, there was no provision for abortion. But the new exception has not been used to justify the taking of the life of a child yet.
So why are you at the facilities if they're not aborting children?
Because they can still refer women to England, and about, I think, I don't know the exact figure, but I think between 3 and 4,000 women went overseas to have abortions in 2012. They don't have the statistics for 2013 published yet.
Overseas?
They went to London, roughly. Manchester, Birmingham, London.
How far away is that?
It's a flight. It's maybe an hour flight. They have to book a flight or find some other transport. Most of them, there are ferries that do go across the channel. But yeah, it's not cheap though. It's not cheap. Like like Mary Stopes is one of the biggest providers of abortion to women in Ireland who are seeking abortions. So they would charge the woman for the abortions, for their accommodate. They would find accommodation for them on but that would be part of their fee, and it would give them like maybe one night in a facility, in some kind of an overnight in England before they would fly back. But I think the women are responsible for booking their flights, but that there is a certain provision for them to have a night or two to stay after the abortion before they have to come back. So, but as far as I know, Tom, the statistics are that the number of women in Ireland electing abortion and having abortions has dropped in the last 5 years, that every year it has declined. So that's a good sign. Fewer women are electing to have abortions, and fewer women are going overseas to have them.
Okay. So, how strong is the faith in Ireland, in your opinion?
I think it's quite strong. I really believe that the vast majority of Irish people, even those who don't go to Mass regularly or who don't even go to worship in a Christian church, would still have a certain degree of faith they would rely on in their daily life. They wouldn't necessarily be considered among the statistics of practicing Catholics or practicing Christians, but the vast majority of people do believe that God came to earth as Jesus Christ, and that he died on the cross for them. That's my impression.
Okay. So, what would you say? There's a lot of talk about the new evangelization that the church has called for, the Pope has called for, the last Pope has called for, the Pope before that has called for. The new evangelization, and everywhere you go, someone's got a different, like, what is the new evangelization? If we were to ask you, what is the new evangelization? What would you say? And why?
A very good question. To me, the new evangelization is putting yourself into under the mantle of Mary and into the hands of God. Putting yourself in the presence of God, trying to draw others into that presence. And it's not so much what I say, it's not so much even the actual external actions that I do every day. It's more the spirit in which I strive to live every day. To try to live in the spirit of love and in truth. So that to me is my way of evangelizing, by allowing God into my life in a deeper way every day, so that he can touch it wherever he wants to when they're in my presence.
And finally, Gordon, what's your impressions of Pope Francis? What are people saying about him in Ireland? And certainly he's making a lot of waves here in the United States.
I think he's a man who is very, very much courageous. He's very courageous to be willing to stir up the status quo. The church has needed someone who can call the hierarchy to a higher level of accountability for their own mediocrity, for their own lack of fervor in spreading the word. And so he's not just about trying to maintain the status quo and just live a very comfortable life as a wearing the nice clothes of a pope and living in palatial estates. He's living a simple life. He's trying to lead by example, and he's not afraid to write and to say things which are very, very controversial and challenging people to look at their lives in a very spiritual way.
Okay. Now understand he was in South Korea, prayed at a tomb for the unborn child.
Praise God.
What, Gordon, I know you were in the seminary and you're very active with the Legion of Mary and studied theology. When do you believe the soul is created?
My interpretation of God's creation of the human soul would be that God had an idea of us before we were created. The Psalms say that before I formed you in the womb, I knew you. Before I created you, I knew you. So that would imply that in some way we were known to God before He created us in our mother's womb. Now, whether that means that our soul pre-existed, I'm not going to make a judgment on that. I can't say for sure that our soul existed, even though we may have been thought of by God before He created us. So I think He infuses the soul into the body at conception, and whether the soul pre-existed the body or not, I'm really not at liberty to say. But certainly no one creates anything unless they have a plan before they create. Nobody builds a building without first drawing up a plan. No architect is going to, no builder is going to go to build a building without a blueprint, without some kind of architectural, plan. So God could have had a plan for you and me in our creation before He created us, and whether that meant that whether the soul was present when that thought came into His mind or not, that's open to debate.
Okay, so would you say that we existed in the mind of God prior to our earthly conception?
Well, that's basically something that I could support that theory.
We existed in the mind of God before our earthly conception.
Yes.
Okay. So if you existed in God's mind, okay, and now you exist on the earth in a physical way,
in time,
okay, what do you think is actually, or where do you think is actually a more preferable place to be? Existing in God's mind or existing in the physical time and space of earth?
I don't quite follow the question. Where is a better place to be?
If you had curtain number 1 or curtain number 2, that Gordon, you can choose to exist in time and space on earth with the company of demons, devils, murderers, thieves, rapists, abortionists, nice people, sick people, storms, earthquakes, famine. If you had a choice of living door number 1, earthly life after the fall, or door number 2, in the mind of God, what do you pick, 1 or 2?
That's a really interesting question, but I mean, this is the only life I've ever known, Tom. This is the only, I can't put myself into a situation where I could say, well, I want to stay in the mind of God, and I don't want to have an earthly existence. I just want to live in the mind of God. I mean, that would imply that I feel like my life on earth really has less value than a life lived only in the mind of God.
Only in the mind of God? Did you really just say only in the mind of God? Like that's insignificant?
Yes, I think it's less. I think it's less. I mean, because to put myself only in the mind of God would mean that I never walked the earth, that I never had an existence in my corporeal body, and that would imply that really I never existed in a way where I could make choices in a human body.
Okay. Well, this, brothers and sisters, these are the questions that we got to get going out there, and we got to be talking about this because there are a large number of people who are believing, they're reading, they're educating themselves, and they're becoming more and more aware of the spiritual realm and the existence in the spiritual realm. Many say heaven, right? Heaven is God's home. God's mind is God's mind. To exist in God's mind, does that mean you're existing in heaven? That makes sense to me because God's in heaven. So his mind's obviously in heaven too. So to exist in the mind of God means to exist in heaven. Okay? The earthly existence is far from heaven. Okay? It's far from heaven. When we hear about people getting their heads chopped off mercilessly, we hear about all this racial violence in the United States of America. As Gordon was sharing earlier, a country such as Ireland, that women are taking planes to England to abort their children. To exist in the mind of God, that stuff's not happening. Okay? God's mind is pure. God's mind is holy. That's where we belong. In God's mind. That's where we belong. Okay? Jesus came down to the earth. God came into our world. God came into our mind, basically. This is our mind. God didn't think of all this evil. That's not his mind. His mind is pure and holiness. This is our mind. God came into our mind to basically as soap, to try to cleanse our mind and now he wants us to come into his mind. Okay, and that is the new evangelization, is actually, returning to the mind of God, and with this beautiful woman who's in between us right now, leading the way back home. I mean, she's leading the way back home. She's here. She's appearing to people. She's talking to people. There's all kinds of signs that she's leaving. So we need to come under Mary, everybody. Catholics, Protestants, come under Mary. Okay, because Jesus has sent her to lead us home. Home is the new heaven and the new earth, the new heavenly Jerusalem, the mind of God. That's where we belong. That's where we used to exist at the beginning of time. That's where we existed. We ended up down here. We weren't rewarded. That's not I'm going to reward you with sending you down to hang out with the devil. No, that's not a reward. That's a punishment. Okay, we're here because of original sin. That's why we're all here. If it wasn't for original sin, we wouldn't be here. And that was a punishment. So we got to get it right, people, because the more comfortable you are here on this earth, the further you're away from heaven. God doesn't want us comfortable here. Jesus said, my kingdom's not of this world. We're not supposed to be fighting for this world, but for our heavenly inheritance. So, anything you want to say, brother, before we sign off for the night?
I would just want to maybe add one small thing to what you've said, and that God, when he saw creation, he said basically that it is good. God did not, when he created the earth and when he created man, he said it is very good. So some of what you're saying is denying the goodness of creation and the goodness of the human person, the innate goodness that's in everyone. And in a way, you're sort of painting a very black picture of creation and a somewhat dim and dark picture of the human being. And I would think we need to have a lot more faith in human beings, because God puts a lot more trust in us than we put in him. He became a human being because he saw something good in us, something that was essentially good from the beginning, which needed to be redeemed, but it didn't need to be obliterated. God did not have to wipe out the human race and start again with Jesus Christ. When Moses pleaded with God in the desert not to wipe out his people, he said, "Look, you saved these people from the slavery of Egypt. You brought them out with mighty wonders and outstretched hand. It was not to destroy them in the desert. It was because you wanted to save these people. This was a people you created to be especially your own. So we have all been created in love and redeemed in love. And we have a place in God's kingdom as long as we try to live in love. Because those who live in love live in God now. I am living in God now because I am striving to live in love and to love my neighbor and God with my whole heart and mind and soul. So I am bringing heaven down to earth to the extent that I am living in love and trying to teach others how to do the same."
You have a song to close?
I do.
Okay, here you go.
A little out of tune. Here we are. Jesus Christ, he's your life. Jesus Christ, better than a wife. Jesus Christ, calms all strife. Jesus Christ, cuts like a knife. Jesus Christ, he died for you. Jesus Christ was a good Jew. Jesus Christ, his love is true. Jesus Christ, he can make us brand new. Jesus Christ, come to him. Jesus Christ, he lives within. Jesus Christ forgives our sins. Jesus Christ, he always wins. Jesus Christ rose from the dead. Jesus Christ, he gets me out of bed. Yeah, Jesus Christ, he's living bread. Jesus Christ, he can clear your head. Jesus Christ, you know he reigns in heaven. Jesus Christ, he surely comes again. Jesus Christ, he's our best friend.